Anne Frank, The Diary of a Young Girl, is a book that was written by Anne Frank herself and was first published by her father after her death in the Nazi concentration camp as her remembrance, and it presents a very touching account of her life. To get a peek into her life, we will look at the historical background and the milestones of her life together before we proceed into the chapter. Anne Frank was born on June 12, 1929 in Frankfurt, Germany. But in 1933 itself, the family had to move to Amsterdam to escape the Nazis. 7 years later, in 1940, the Germans invaded the Netherlands, and Anne's father had to plan to hide in the secret annexe. In 1942, in July, the Frank family moved into hiding in the annex of Frank Otter's office, along with a set of 3 more families. But in 1944, on August 4, the inhabitants of the secret annexe were betrayed, and they were arrested and sent to the concentration camps. Sadly, in 1945, Anne died of the typhus disease just 2 weeks before the Bergen-Belsen concentration camp was liberated by the British forces. Anne Frank is a name that is associated with the cruelest historical event of World War II, that is, the Holocaust. Not every one of us knows the atrocities that were inflicted upon the Jews till you read about the world history. Anne Frank was a young Jewish girl who had to go into hiding with her family to save themselves from the Nazis under the cruel rule of Adolf Hitler. In 1942 alone, some 25,000 Jews, including at least 4,500 children, went into hiding. But about 1/3 of those in hiding were discovered, arrested, and deported, and Anne Frank and her family were one of them. In all, at least 80% of the pre-war Dutch Jewish community perished. Otto Frank, the father of Anne Frank, was the only member of the secret annexe to survive the war. The Diary of Anne Frank is an actual account of her feelings that she wrote in her diary, which she named Kitty. It records her emotions and incidents that took place in school, her family, the annex, and it also gives us a view of the war times. The diary held a very special position in the life of Anne. She named it Kitty because it was her best friend. It was her confidante. All her secrets would be safe with her. That's what she thought. She thought it to be trustworthy because she could not trust anyone at that time. And that's why she says paper had more patience than people, because paper is non-reactive. Paper did not have any grudges, whereas people could have, and people would also let out secrets. The diary is basically something which contains a brief bio sketch of a young 13-year-old girl, which she calls the musings of a 13-year-old. It expresses her feelings and desires. It is also a very mature work which reflects deep insight. Anne Frank, in her diary, says that it was a very strange experience writing a diary. In the chapter, Anne gives us a brief introduction about her family, friends, and her grandmother, whom she loved a lot. Her father, Otto Frank, and mother, Edith Frank, had migrated to Holland, and the sisters, Margaret and Anne, were raised by their grandmother till they joined the parents in Holland. The excerpt is a memory that Anne recorded in her diary on 20th June 1942. It talks of a day from her class. Her entire class was terrified of the upcoming teachers' meeting. In this meeting, the teachers would decide who would move to the next grade. Anne believed that teachers were unpredictable creatures on earth. She was not too worried about herself as she got along with all the teachers except for Mr. Keesing. Anne was a talkative girl. However, Mr. Keesing, the maths teacher, was annoyed with her for talking too much in the class. He assigned her extra work and asked her to write an essay on a chatterbox. That evening, Anne thought over this topic. She was of the opinion that talking was a student's trait, yet she would try to keep it under control. And in keeping with her opinion, she justified her talking in the class and put forth a very convincing argument in her essay. She argued in her essay that it was good to talk rather than write a long essay. And then she said that she had inherited this habit of talking from her mother and nothing could be done about her inherited traits. Mr. Keesing enjoyed the argument that Anne gave in her essay. But then, as Anne was, she could not stop talking, and this time Mr. Keesing assigned her a second essay, The Incorrigible Chatterbox. As usual, Anne presented yet another argument and Mr. Keesing liked her second essay a lot. And so he left her for the next two lessons without checking her. Anne Frank was really incorrigible. She could not stop talking, and all she did was chit-chat all the time. This time, Mr. Keesing was really upset, and once again he assigned her another essay. The essay, though, had a very hilarious title, which said, "Quack, quack, quack, said the mistress Chatterbox." The entire class laughed at the title of the essay. Anne herself was bored of writing the essays. It was time to come up with something new and interesting. When her friend offered to help to write the essay in verse, Anne jumped to the idea and wrote a beautiful poem about a mother duck, a father swan, and 3 baby ducklings. In the poem, the 3 baby ducklings were bitten to death by their father for quacking too much. Anne was able to put across the message to her teacher that it is a student's trait to talk and express. Therefore, he should be allowed to do it, but in limits.